fantastic to be here with lots of friends who've come especially to share with this. I'm going to put a slightly different focus on it because rather than regional planning, big strategic issues, lots of the work we do as landscape architects is much more site-specific. It's often to do with derelict land. So we have to find a way of applying these principles to smaller sites, more defined sort of places. Gardens by the Bay, I'm going to talk a little bit about. It was on reclaimed land. You couldn't do a regional assessment of what that was. But also start with a slightly somber thought, actually. The exhibition, for the first time, it sort of revealed to me that David Skinner died when he was 61. I'm 61 next Tuesday. It's a very sort of sobering thought in terms of his impact. And another pure coincidence, I was in Sydney last Friday, and this is Leonard Lynch, who was one of the key people who worked with David delivering the course here, along with Colin Kircher and lots of others. Hugely inspirational and a great friend and mentor to me. And he pointed out, he reminded me of this sort of little thing we did, which was a group of the students trying to sort of organise a trip to America. And David was trying to get them practical experience in American practices, and he wrote this letter, which I'm not going to read it out here, but the key thing I think is this one, which defines his core essence of what he was trying to do. The course sets out to teach design with an emphasis on rational decision making and a sound basis of practical knowledge. Now I remember that very clearly because basically his whole approach was you've got to know what you're talking about. You've got to be able to convince engineers, clients, architects that you know as much about this topic as they do. Otherwise you're not going to sort of get anywhere. The first time I met David Skinner, I showed my school portfolio. This was one of the things. He asked me to draw a wheelbarrow. I don't know who was more surprised. And then we went on to the course, and I've, like lots of others, I've been digging out drawings and said, this, ridiculous sketch, but it illustrates that from the beginning, I was really interested in the idea of landscape as a sort of an educational resource, particularly environmental education. And I've yet to make an entrance gateway out of crushed Rolls Royces. It'd be quite fun. But it led on to actually how do we communicate these things. So this is one of the first diagrams I did when I set up my practice for the Earth Centre in Conisbrough. And it's really a reinterpretation of how do you diagram water in a project. And this is trying to express how you might find pathways for irrigation, for habitat creation, for creating joy and beautiful things in the landscape. And that, for me, was a really important sort of turning point. And he went on to create, reclaimed 170 hectares of derelict coalfield, created a visit attraction which failed miserably, but is still going. It's a fantastic educational centre now. It has 600 kids a day on there, learning about the environment, having great fun. And the living machine, the first one in the country, is still working, just. And those principles that we learned from that went on to lots of other projects in the office, including Accordia housing scheme in Cambridge, which won the Sterling Prize in 2008. And it was one of those where basically us as landscape architects demonstrated, actually informed the plan hugely in terms of what that place should be, in terms of its ecological framework, its placemaking environment. And it is about living in a garden, it's all about living in a garden. And we don't really do gardens, but we did one for the Japan Expo for the British Pavilion in 2005. And this is my first sketch. Oh yeah, we won't make a garden, make a wood. And we did. We made a beautiful woodland out of Tinea species that happen to be very similar to the ones we have in the UK, and created this sort of 6-month garden transition from daffodils and bluebells through to ferns and foxgloves, and it was really magical, but it was all about that idea of connecting people with nature. And that is an underlying theme for everything that we do at Grant Associates. So Gardens by the Bay was definitely all about that idea. Singapore is, as a place, is somewhere that is very, very advanced in the way, and very aggressive actually in the way it thinks about landscape and the environment. It identifies itself as a city in a garden. They see the value of landscape not just in terms of creating the green setting. It's about economy. It's about biodiversity. It's about quality of life. And this is my first sketch, is trying to get my head around how do we do this. So it's reference to the orchid, the national flower of Singapore. Physiology is really extraordinary because it can live on weird places, and flowers are beautiful. So it's a very simple diagram for how the gardens might work. So that's like the spatial, the aesthetic context. But parallel to that is this idea of systems and processes, and how do we create an ecology, an ecosystem that belongs to this place. And for me, these two things, the aesthetic conceptual framework alongside and plugged into the ecological framework, is really important. And I think to a certain extent, McHarg did this bit, got you thinking about that, the sort of synthesis of information, but didn't have enough of the aesthetic stuff. And I'm glad I put this slide in. So I had to see the project appear on Planet Earth 2. And David Attenborough sort of talking about it in his inimitable way. I don't know if that is trumped by Hello Kitty and Lego. But anyway, experience and process, day and night, thinking about the seasons. Well, you don't have seasons in Singapore particularly, but I'm going to flip through these images really fast, because this is a story about some of the elements where the idea of collaboration. This is about us as landscape architects leading an extraordinarily complex design process. These super trees, the idea that we wanted them to have an environmental narrative to them. How do you make them stand up? So we led the team to do that, and they have become this extraordinary place in the heart of the Gardens by the Bay. And it opened in 2012, and it's extraordinary, the sort of three-dimensional qualities of the landscape that's appeared. And we made that, just doing, this is part of that idea of space and aesthetics and experience, putting people up in the air 20 metres. It's really interesting. And thinking about that day-night transition. It's a party place. It's 3,000 or 4,000 people every night gather in this space just to enjoy it. And it is basically that idea that this is the synthesis really of nature in the city, some intelligent planning and design. And the same went for the conservatories. The idea that we actually want to inject some quite simple, powerful, almost primal sort of experience, landscape experiences in the city. A 40-metre high waterfall is something that's quite powerful to see. And it is something quite powerful to see. And lots of people just walk into this cool conservatory and go, my goodness, that's amazing. So behind this, although it's all about people's enjoyment and people learning about this environment, there's very sophisticated engineering design, the structure, the environmental systems. But at the end of the day, it's a zero carbon project. I haven't got time to tell you about how that works. But extraordinary, the scale of the plants. Basically, this 40-metre high artificial mountain is just clad with plants of all types. And inside the mountain is a story about climate change. So you have this two things going on. One is an extraordinary three-dimensional experience, particularly when the misting's on. And then you go inside and you can be scared to death. But it has an impact. Loads of school kids go and they basically research it and they record what they feel. And I love this one. I think you're taken aback by the nature and leaves you a memorable experience in a land of magic. And it's used by the whole community of Singapore. It's growing in its biodiversity. It is a real symbol of what we can really do as landscape architects, to the point where it's actually adopted by the Singapore state as This is our symbol. This is our city in a garden. Last few slides, if I may, which is really just reflecting on, the idea that actually what do we do now? The idea that actually we are in a real crisis that we've all got to find a way of reacting to. And the think global, act local thing, totally useless. Hasn't done anything really. We've all got to act in every single way we can, and that's my thought. And we've got to recognise that actually what we do here has an implication on the other side of the world somewhere. So thinking that global perspective all the time is super important. And for me, we all have to take up different challenges. This is my version of a sub-regional project, which is Biotscape. It's 100 square kilometres of landscape in the city of Bath, World Heritage Site. How do we protect and preserve and create a future for that extraordinary place? Look at all the designations. It's surrounded by AOB, Greenbelt, etc. As part of that, it's mobilising the community. So we've set up this pop-up festival called Forest Imagination, which every year for 4 days just engages thousands of kids and families to come and reinterpret a piece of the city. Sometimes it gets a bit out of hand. And the other one we're doing is in Madagascar, working with Bristol Zoo. I thought it would be really important, really interesting to actually get involved with a project which is right at the forefront of biodiversity loss and poverty. And this is a project where basically this is blue-eyed black lemur. There's only about 1,000 of them left in the wild. And we're helping Bristol Zoo create a project which creates a research centre, creates reforestation of the environment, helps to work with the local community so that they can build a different economy from shooting lemurs and chopping trees down. And it's very rewarding. We've managed to engage Philip Bradley Architects and Bureau Happold in the development of this. It will become a great story to bring back to the zoo. And there it is, the pioneering creation of the bricks using a particular sort of press. So that's it under construction. But meanwhile, in project land, we're also having to deal with, real challenges. This is in Madrid. We just finished a master plan of Rogerstoke Harbour for about a 7-kilometre corridor from Chamartin Station to the north of the city, which is partially about covering over the rail network and reclaiming lots of sort of semi-derelict industrial land to create new environments. All the things we've been talking about in terms of managing resources. And this one literally just been published in the AJ, I think today, where we have led one of the biggest projects in Singapore. It's like a 600-hectare master plan for the regeneration of what was partially the industrial port into a world-leading leisure attraction destination and the restoration of huge areas of rainforest and coral reef. Just flick through some of these. Last one, coming back to Sydney. I think it's interesting working in an international context, but how do you do the people and nature reconnection in a real hard urban environment? In here, it was simply about getting people to sit on sandstone and look at the sunset. A very simple idea. But it's nice to see how they put the hoardings up. It's under construction, it'll be finished soon. There's a view down on it. It'll be an amazing place, Darling Harbour. And ultimately, for me, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reconnect ourselves with the natural world in a much more equitable way. Thank you.